Okay, to mark where the overarm goes, because once this overarm is locked in position, that's exactly, you're going to be exactly on center, because the overarm is figured to the center of these V blocks. So that hole is directly on center of the V block, so when the barrel lays in that V block, you're directly on center. So to figure out where you want to be, in this case we marked the barrel. Just took I put some tape on the barrel and made a line. I covered that a little bit earlier. But all we did is, once that line was on, and we knew exactly where we wanted, we just placed this centering point into the jig, and we just rotated it. Now that's, we're over the line where we think we're pretty close, and then we move it back out, and we look inside, and we see if the little point mark from this thing, if I can get it in focus, is in the center of the line. If it's not, then we reposition this arm. And what we did was we took a little cotton swab here, kind of rubbed it over the line or the mark, or we took the inside, rubbed it over to kind of smooth out the little divot that was left by this point, and just kept redoing that until we found exactly the center of the line where we wanted to be. Once we were on that mark, once we were exactly where we wanted to be on the center of the line, we locked this arm in position. You snug that down good. You place this center point in there exactly on point, and then you tap it with a hammer. Now you've got a center mark right where you're going to drill. After that, you come in with your drill bushing, place your drill bushing in there. You come in with your drill that's marked to depth, and you take your hand drill, a little electric, in this case a battery operated drill, a Makita or a DeWalt, whatever you got, and you slowly drill this hole using cutting oil. You drill to the depth. In this case, there's two drills they want you to use. This is a pre-drill. Then you come back out, and then they've got the finish drill size. And then you go in here and you run the finish drill in there. Again, the same thing. It's marked for the exact depth that the earlier one was marked at. Go to the bottom of the hole. Then you're ready to tap. Once again, with this, you want to use cutting fluid. There's a tap bushing that you set in there. And then this is the tap that I used. Little tap handle on it. Again, cutting oil. You place that in there. And when you first start, it doesn't matter. You can just place it in there. You're on the hole, and you start turning down. I want to let you know, though, I'm going to move this out of this hole because I don't want to do any damage to the existing threads. I'm going to move it up one just to show you, give you an example. You just place it in there, and you just start rotating it like this with cutting oil on it. Go easy. I would suggest don't use that large handle. Put your fingers down here and rotate it right here. As you're going in, you'll feel resistance start to increase. That means a chip is probably starting to block the way of the tap. So what you want to do is come back maybe a half a turn or 3/4 of a turn, and then go in again. As you get near the bottom of the hole, chips are going to develop down in the bottom of the hole. So what you have to do is you have to remove the tap all the way out. So you unscrew the tap all the way out, bring the tap out, remove the bushing, take a little air gun, stick it down in there, blow the chips out of the hole, make sure the hole is clean. You start all over again, put oil on the tap. This time though, when you place the tap in there, the first thing you want to do is rotate the tap backwards. When you rotate the tap backwards, you'll hear it or feel it click. When it clicks, that means it's lined up on the thread. Because if you just start turning that, you'll possibly cut a new thread start. and you just room the hole. So I can take you back over to the original hole and show you what I'm talking about. You place that, this is over a tapped hole now. So it goes in there and you rotate it backwards. Right there, you heard it click, and very gently. No, I'm not happy with that. Let's do it again. Click. No. There it is. You got to be very careful with this. You do not want to start a new thread. You want to make sure that you're in the thread. And when I say I wasn't happy with it, as soon as I turned in, I could feel resistance. You don't want to feel that. At the beginning of that thread, it's already cut, so that tap should, at the very start, should go right in. If you feel resistance, back off. And do what I just did. You back off, you turn it backwards again, feel for the click. Alright, we're out of the hole. Clicks there. And I could feel no resistance, and then all of a sudden she'll pick up again where you start cutting fresh threads. When you reach the bottom of this hole, if this is the first time you've ever tapped, this is not a good idea. You want to do this somewhere else first, a blind hole, do a couple of practice holes. But when you reach the bottom of the hole, you will feel the tap will stop, and if you put too much pressure on the tap, you'll break the tap. Not a good idea. So in this case, the tap, I can definitely feel the tap stops, but this hole's already tapped. But as you're tapping, you'll feel resistance, 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 and then all of a sudden you'll feel a lot of resistance, and that's the bottom of the hole. In this process, you might have cleared chips out of that hole maybe 3 or 4 times though. So it's a slow process. Take your time. You can do it. Once again, if this is the first hole you ever tapped, you definitely want to do a few practice. A few, when I say a few, a half dozen. In this case, we got all 3 holes tapped. There's the rear sight. The front sight, I wanted to show you that little trick about turning it backwards so you understood that. Alright, we'll continue on. Take a little break here. Okay, I wanted to cover a little bit about the tap. The taps that are used for, in this case, this is a Williams gun sight. You use a number 6, that's a number 6 diameter, and then its threads per inch is 48. So here on eBay, we found this, it's called the Spiral Flute Tap, a 648. And if you look at the tap itself, that's the tap in the tap handle. And if you look at the tap, I don't know if it's going to show up on this thing, but it actually shows 6-48. It's a Guring, I think I'm saying that correctly. It's a high-speed cobalt tap. At least that's what the ad said, and that's what's marked on the tap. It says HS-CO. CO is the cobalt, and HS is the high speed. It's just a type of tool steel that they use. 648 is the thread, and this is what they call a spiral flute tap. It's supposed to be better for pulling the chips out of the bottom of the hole. So when you're doing a blind hole like this, anything you can get to help you get those chips out of the bottom of the hole. Like I said, you want to stop this thing as soon as you feel that resistance, and bring it all the way back out, get the air gun out, blow the chips out of the hole, make sure the hole is clean all the way to the bottom, rotate the tap backwards, and then start it again and continue on with your tapping. You might only get a half or 1 turn out of each one of those processes of pulling it out and blowing it out with the air to clear the chips. But as you get towards the bottom of this hole, you want to be very careful. Move slowly on this one. This thing here is a thread gauge. It's got I don't know, I think it goes to 78, from 1 to 78 threads per inch. So you can use that. But being that this was a spiral flute tap, I wasn't able to get a good match because the threads on the tap aren't all in line. So when you lay this the thread gauge on a spiral flute, you can't really, it's hard to get a good match. with the 648 marked on the tap, we thought we were good. In this case, it proved to be wrong. Okay, we cut out there for a second, but in this case we proved to be 648 tap. Even though it states that on the tap, it wasn't a 648. We contacted Goering, and we finally determined that this tap is truly a number 640. So that's 40 threads per inch. So we had already tapped all the holes in the barrel. So this barrel is tapped with a 640 tap instead of a 648, which was a problem. Because all the screws that you get for these things are 648, and all the screws you're going to find are going to be 648. 640 is like a fine thread for a number 6 tap. So we had to go find some number 640 screws, which we did. We lucked out. The only other issue is the minor diameter of the threads between a 640 and 648 is a little bit different. So the minor diameter, the pre-drill for that is a little bit larger for the 648. And these were drilled these holes were prepared for 648 because everything said 648. But in this case, that turned out not to be true. Anyhow, the holes got tapped. We're kind of it's either that or you trash the barrel. And then we ended up. Here's our rear ramp, and these are the screws we found. And there's the front ramp. And once again, we found some socket head screws. We cut the diameter of the heads down so that they would fit the holes, and then we cut the lengths off so that they would fit. So that's what we ended up with. We got to blue them, and then I called Williams. Williams does not have a torque recommended. So when you install these sights, Williams told me clean the hole out. I'm probably going to use some alcohol, isoprep alcohol, to clean all the oils and whatnot out of the hole, and clean the screws with the isoprep alcohol. And then they said use some blue Loctite and snug them down. So I did a prep on this. I came up with 7 inch-pounds for a torque. I looked at some torque charts for this size screw, and somehow I came up with 7 inch-pounds for a torque. So I'm going to use a little bit less than that, because when you put any kind of lubricant, which Loctite, even though it's a thread locker, it goes from a dry thread to a wet thread. You got to knock off 1/3. So I'm going to take the 7 inch-pounds, knock off 1/3, and we'll torque it down there, and hopefully everything will be okay. So that's pretty much it. We'll show you this thing once we get it finally assembled with the sights on it. So stand by. Okay, here we are with this gun barrel. We've got the sight ramp and base mounted on the barrel. What we did is clean the holes out with isoprep alcohol and clean the screws out. We blued the screws. And there you have it. There's the rear base mounted. This is just a test. There's no Loctite on them right now. We just wanted to make sure everything fits. And there's the front. Once again, they're torqued using this basically a torquing screwdriver. This is in inch ounces, 16 inch ounces to an inch pound. So that I think it's set to 112, which is 7 inch-pounds. So that's the tool that we use to develop the final torque, just to make sure that these threads are going to hold and be solid. So there you have it. There's the gun barrel. The rear base is on. Front base is on. Just to show you, basically what we did is we just took a drill to cut the screws down. You can see the screws were a little bit long. We chucked on the threads, and then we ran the OD of the head against the belt sander until the head fit inside of the ramp there. So the head had to fit. They were too big, so we had to cut the OD of the head down, and then we had to cut the height of the head down as well. So instead of running the OD of it, we just ran the face against the belt sander until we got to the right dimension where the head was just below the surface. Same thing was done here on the back. And then we cut them to length. We reversed the screw, cut them long, reversed the screw, chucked on the head this time, and polished down on the belt sander to the correct length. And then we held going straight in against it, just straight in against perpendicular to the threads, straight in on the belt sander until we got to the correct length. And then we held the drill at about, this is while the drill is rotating, at about a I don't know, 30 to 45 degree angle, and just kind of like put a little lead on the tip of the screws. So that's it. That's how we cut the screws down, because we had to custom make screws for this because the tap was mismarked. Somehow this tap was marked 648, and it truly was a 640. So we had to come up with some 640 screws for it, and that's how we did it. Okay, one of the other things that I wanted to cover, I did not do this, but it talks about it in the manual for this drill fixture, and I wanted to cover it because I think it's a good idea. They talk about when you've got a mount that has multiple holes in it, to go ahead and locate, just like basically I did, I showed you, is basically you put the piece of tape on there, mark exactly where you want the hole to be, then locate the arm over the top of it, and insert this drill point in, center point in, over the line, rotate the point so that it leaves just a little bit of a mark on the tape. Bring it back out, take a look at it. If it's not where you want it to be, adjust until it is. Each time you could take a stick like this and roll it over the top of the tape, and it'll basically wipe out that little mark that you made. Again, you're doing this very lightly. And then do it again until you get exactly where you want to be. You drill your first hole. They talk about mounting whatever sight base you have. So you get that sight base mounted with the first hole down. And then they say move the arm over the top of the, I'll try and do this, over the top of the sight base that you have. Let me loosen this thing up. Okay, now we've got that second hole right there. So that what they want you to do is move the arm right over the top of it. Use the point again. Come right on in, down on it. So that the point now locates in the hole. Once you have that, they're saying lock it down, pull the point out. Okay, and what they actually want you to do is they want you to remove that base. They don't want you drilling with the base in there. So this is where the stop comes into play. This stop can be placed on this machine side, and on this one I couldn't, but it could be placed if you don't have that other support in there. On the side, on the machine side, now you've got a stop. You can move this overarm out of the way, remove your base, and with the stop on there, you'll come exactly, you just move the arm right back to where the stop is located, because you lock the stop in on location. Once this arm was in the exact spot you wanted it, you brought the stop in, you locked it in on location. If we can do that. Okay, so what we did is we moved the stop in. You can see there's two little meeting points or touching points in between the two. You lock that stop in exact location, then you can loosen up the overarm, pull that thing out of the way, remove the sight base, okay, and then bring this overarm back in until it touches the stop, lock it back down. Now you should be exactly where that was, where you were on center there, using this little pointed centering point. And then you tap your little centering point on the barrel. You've got a little divot there. Now you go in and drill. Once again, you use your drilling bushings. Do your pre-drill first, and then you follow that with the final size drill, and then you use the tapping bushing to keep the tap aligned so everything goes exactly in spot. I just thought that in my case I just marked both holes and use the point on both holes and did it that way. The reason I did it that way is because I have that extra arm in there, number one. Number two, when I initially set up the barrel, I didn't leave enough clearance to get the rear sight ramp in. So once again, the way you set this barrel up is the distance on this V block is 700 and, I'm sorry, in this case it was 100 and, I forget, 105 thousandths or so less than the front. And the way that was determined, I covered a little bit earlier, but basically it was the barrel diameter minus barrel diameter times 0.707, and this one has to be up that much higher, the 105 thousandths or whatever it was. This way the bore of the barrel is parallel to the base of the jig, and that keeps everything aligned up. Anyhow, I thought this was a decent idea. I wanted to include it on the video so that you can see that there's another way to locate if you don't want to use the two-line method, or if your mount has a lot of holes to follow through on. This is another way to do it if you don't want to use draw a line each time and locate it with the centering point. All right. Okay, here it is. The sights are mounted. Both bases are on. They're Loctited on. The final torque on this was 75 inch-ounces, which was 7 inch-pounds less 1/3. 7 inch-pounds was 112, I think, inch-ounces, and we ended up around 75 inch-ounces. Front ramp is on, locked in with Loctite. That's the Loctite we use. It's a blue Loctite. And then the rear is on with the Loctite. Okay, we'll get this thing out of here and onto the stock and get the front bead on and see how she looks. Okay, there you have it. The front bead is on and mounted into the ramp. Basically, I use this Williams sight pusher tool and a couple of drops of oil placed on the dovetail there, and cranked it in until she was flush. On the rear, we put the actual fire sight into on the ramp. All right. Okay, here we have it. It's completed. There's a rear sight mounted on the barrel. There's a front sight mounted with the fire sight placed in it, the bead. So there you have it. Forster jig, some mounting screws. Lesson learned, make sure you've got the correct tap. There's the whole gun. Turned out rather nice. Had we had the correct tap, things would have went a lot smoother, but we made do. So thanks for watching. Next project we got coming up. We're still working on a Jolita amplifier, so that's not done. More of a winter project. When we get that done, or when we get something better on that, we'll get that posted. Okay, Ruger 1022 with iron sights. That does not come with iron sights. Iron sights installed. Williams iron sights, by the way. So long.